Avelina Royce smiled as if the world belonged to her, unaware that every move was being watched. Sheikh Rafiq Al-Zahir believed he had discovered a rare opportunity, not knowing the danger lurking behind charm and deception. Detective Jordan Mace traced invisible trails, while Agent Omar Keane pieced together a web of lies that could collapse at any moment. Nadia Serrano's small mistake was about to expose the perfect crime, threatening everything Avelina had built. One misstep, one hidden truth, and the illusion of control would shatter, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats. Desperate to see what happens next, Avelina Royce moved through Miami's elite circles like a shadow dressed in glitter. To anyone observing, she was the picture of success. Flawless outfits, sparkling smiles, and an air of effortless charm. She attended high-profile charity events, rooftop parties, and art galas, always appearing in control, always seemingly lucky. But behind the socialite persona was a mind that calculated everything in painstaking detail. Avelina had long realized that charm could be more powerful than talent, that a well-timed smile could open doors that credentials never could. She had studied the wealthy, the powerful, and the influential, learning their patterns, their habits, and most importantly, their weaknesses. The world she navigated was full of glittering facades, and she had learned to read between them. When Avelina first heard that Sheikh Rafiq Al-Zahir, a Dubai billionaire with investments spanning the globe, was visiting Miami, her pulse quickened. She knew immediately that he was the opportunity she had been waiting for. The Sheikh was known for generosity, but also for trusting the right people to isolate. He was surrounded by luxury, comfort, and advisors who rarely questioned his instincts. Avelina studied every detail about him, the brands he wore, the charities he supported, the meetings he kept, and even the restaurants he preferred. Every movement was a piece of a puzzle she intended to solve. She wanted more than money. She wanted control, the thrill of executing a perfect plan that left no room for mistakes. For weeks she prepared. She created a polished persona of sophistication and business acumen, convincing even her closest acquaintances that she had inherited investments from a long-lost family fortune. Her social media was carefully curated, filled with images of luxury properties, private jets, and international travel, all designed to appear natural and unforced. Every post, every story, every public appearance was a calculated move to make her irresistible to someone like the Sheikh. Behind the scenes, her accomplice, Nadia Serrano, worked tirelessly. Nadia was quieter, methodical, and skilled with digital manipulation. She created fake investment reports, forged property documents, and online dashboards that looked legitimate even to the most scrutinizing eye. Together, they formed a duo capable of crafting illusions that felt real. The night Avelina first approached Sheikh Rafiq was set like a scene from a movie, a private fundraiser at a luxury penthouse overlooking the Miami skyline, glittering lights reflecting off the ocean. She positioned herself in the perfect spot, letting chance seem like fate. Every smile, every casual comment, every glance was intentional. She learned his reactions, noted the way he nodded, the pauses he made, and the questions he asked. She created an aura of subtle expertise, someone who had stumbled upon a rare opportunity but was generous enough to share it. The Sheikh, impressed by her apparent intelligence and refined taste, welcomed her insights, never suspecting that they were carefully scripted. Avelina didn't need to push too hard. She let the Sheikh feel in control, even as she guided him toward the decision she wanted. Every story she told about her supposed investments was backed by documents Nadia had meticulously forged. Every photograph of properties and offices she referenced had been staged and edited. Avelina made the scheme feel like a natural conversation, a serendipitous moment in the luxury-filled world they both inhabited. She understood human psychology, the way trust could be built, not by evidence alone, but by perception, by consistency, and by the subtle suggestion of exclusivity. By the end of the night, Avelina had embedded herself into Sheikh Rafiq's financial imagination. He saw a woman who could introduce him to a new, lucrative opportunity, unaware that the entire project was fabricated. Avelina left the fundraiser with a quiet sense of satisfaction. Knowing she had planted the seed that would grow into a fortune she intended to claim, she smiled outwardly, masking the thrill that coursed through her veins. Each step had been executed flawlessly. Each precaution, from digital camouflage to social appearances, was designed to create a story that no one could question until, of course, the cracks began to form in ways she could not yet imagine. The city of Miami slept beneath her, unaware that a carefully crafted deception had begun, a plan that would intertwine wealth, ambition, and danger in ways that neither Avelina nor Sheikh Rafiq could yet foresee. She believed she had the world in her hands, but sometimes the smallest detail can unravel the grandest designs. And not even a golden smile can protect someone from the consequences of their own cunning. Avelina Royce's plan moved from imagination to reality with precision that could almost be admired if it weren't criminal. She created a luxury coastal development project that existed only on paper and in carefully staged digital spaces. Every detail was engineered to convince Sheikh Rafiq Al-Zahir that he was investing in something both exclusive and profitable. The project documents were immaculate, architectural designs that looked like real properties, financial projections that seemed grounded in market trends, and legal paperwork that mimicked the intricate language of legitimate investments. Nadia Serrano had spent days perfecting every digital dashboard, every spreadsheet, every website page. Each element looked unassailable, as though a team of professional analysts had crafted it. Avelina didn't rush the Sheikh. She understood the value of patience, of letting curiosity and desire grow naturally. She presented the investment as a rare opportunity, a chance for him to enter a market few knew existed. Every conversation was carefully timed, every meeting strategically designed to strengthen the illusion. Avelina appeared casual, almost as if she had stumbled upon the opportunity herself. She made the Sheikh feel in control, giving him the impression that his judgment was the guiding force behind every decision. In reality, he was following the steps she had laid out with meticulous care. The Sheikh, dazzled by what seemed to be a combination of charm and expertise, began to engage more seriously. He asked questions, and Avelina provided answers that were exact enough to satisfy curiosity, but vague enough to avoid scrutiny. She made the impossible seem natural. Offshore accounts, international legal structures, and complex tax strategies were presented as part of her sophisticated network. Each document Nadia prepared was a layer of protection. It's a digital mask that made the transaction appear legitimate from every angle. Avelina and Nadia had created an illusion so complete that even a careful investor could be deceived. And the Sheikh, trusting and intrigued, began moving money. The first transfer was modest, a test of trust disguised as prudence. The Sheikh sent several $100,000 into the investment account. Avelina ensured the transaction went smoothly, making sure it could be traced, but never back to her personal assets. She watched the funds settle, confirming the digital breadcrumbs Nadia had left would create a believable path if anyone looked too closely. Then, as if guided by the natural flow of events, she encouraged a larger transfer. The Sheikh, reassured by the seamlessness of the initial process and impressed by Avelina's apparent expertise, authorized $5 million? The funds moved swiftly, passing through layers of accounts that looked legitimate but were entirely controlled by the duo. Avelina's confidence grew with every transaction, and she allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction, believing her plan was flawless, but even the most carefully constructed illusions require constant vigilance. Avelina instructed Nadia to continue monitoring every transfer, every email, every digital footprint. They moved quickly to close accounts that had been used temporarily and replace them with new ones. The trail was designed to vanish, leaving only the impression of a legitimate international investment. Avelina celebrated in private, savoring the thought of wealth she could now control. She moved through Miami's sunny streets with a sense of invincibility, knowing her image as a successful businesswoman masked the criminal genius operating beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Sheikh Rafiq began to share progress reports with his team, confident that the investment was on track. The dashboard, the property visuals, and the official-looking documents made everything appear secure. He believed the $5 million were growing, unaware that the entire operation was a fiction created to manipulate his trust. The audacity of Avelina's scheme was breathtaking. She had made deception look like opportunity, greed appear as strategy, and risk seem like safety. As the days passed, the project seemed to gain momentum in the Sheikh's eyes, and Avelina allowed herself a sense of calm. But beneath that calm was a subtle tension. The smallest mistake, the slightest trace of oversight, could undo everything. She moved carefully, knowing that while the money now rested under her control, the illusion had to remain perfect. Every smile she gave, every social media post she crafted, every casual remark to friends was calculated to maintain the story. She was aware that the line between success and exposure was razor thin. And yet, she thrived on the thrill. By the end of the second week, Avelina believed she had achieved the impossible. $5 million secured through deception appeared untouchable. The project looked real, the documents appeared flawless, and even the Sheikh himself felt confident in his judgment. Avelina allowed herself a quiet, private celebration, convinced that she had orchestrated the perfect crime. But in a world built on perception and hidden patterns, even the smallest flaw could unravel a carefully constructed empire of lies. And the first cracks were already forming in ways she could not yet see. Weeks after the $5 million transfer, Sheikh Rafiq Al-Zahir began to notice subtle inconsistencies that gnawed at his confidence. At first, they were small, almost invisible, slightly off dates on reports. Minor discrepancies in property records, or updates that seemed too perfectly timed. He didn't want to alarm himself, believing perhaps it was a simple oversight or a delay in communication. But the feeling of unease grew, persistent and insistent, like a shadow creeping across the edge of his vision. Something about the investment did not feel right, and the more he examined it, the more questions arose. His assistants, initially reassured by the polished reports and professional dashboards, began reporting odd findings. Some property registrations didn't match public records. Addresses on official documents led to empty lots or completely unrelated buildings. The more they investigated, the more fragmented the trail became. Even the financial flows, though appearing legitimate, raised subtle red flags that suggested a carefully crafted illusion rather than genuine transactions. Each new discovery felt like a tiny stitch unraveling the fabric of trust the Sheikh had woven around Avelina Royce. The Sheikh, aware that the matter involved not only millions of dollars, but also his personal reputation, decided to act with caution. Public exposure could cause embarrassment, and private disputes could be exploited by unscrupulous competitors. He contacted an international fraud specialist, Agent Omar Keane, known for his ability to trace financial crimes that crossed borders. Keane's team had expertise in offshore transactions, digital forgeries, and the patterns used by sophisticated scammers. When they began reviewing the case, the red flags multiplied. The investment's documentation, though superficially perfect, had tiny inconsistencies that only an experienced eye could detect. Fonts, slightly different from standard legal templates. Subtle mismatches in timestamps, and metadata that suggested the documents had been digitally manipulated. Meanwhile, Avelina Royce continued to live in Miami as if nothing had changed. She attended social events, posted carefully curated images online, and allowed herself to believe the money was safe and untouchable. She had created a web of accounts, transfers, and false identities that she thought could withstand any scrutiny. But even the most intricate plans have weaknesses, and hers lay in the small details that specialists like Agent Keane were trained to notice. The Sheikh's initiative to involve professionals meant that the game she had thought she controlled was slowly slipping out of her hands. Though she remained blissfully unaware, Detective Jordan Mace, assigned to the Miami investigation, began piecing together patterns that seemed unrelated at first. Avelina's spending habits, the accounts she used, and subtle digital footprints began forming a map that linked her to transactions she believed were invisible. While Nadia Serrano had been meticulous in covering tracks, the sheer scale of the scam meant that even tiny errors could compound. Agent Keane and Detective Mace combined forces, Cross-referencing global account movements with local activity in Miami, they discovered links to temporary accounts, shell companies, and short-lived wallets that led directly back to Avelina's network. As the investigation gained momentum, the Sheikh grew more anxious. He realized that the investment was not just underperforming, it might never have existed at all. The possibility that he had been deceived was terrifying. The project he had trusted, the documents he had examined, and the transactions he had approved were slowly revealed as layers of a fabricated reality. It was no longer a question of profit or loss. It was a matter of uncovering the truth behind a carefully constructed illusion that had taken advantage of his trust. In Miami, Avelina still believed her plan was flawless. She smiled at parties, walked along sunlit streets, and maintained an image of effortless success. But the shadows of investigation were creeping closer. Every email, every phone call, and every digital signature she had left was now a potential thread that could unravel everything. The thrill of her scheme, once intoxicating, was quietly becoming a countdown she could not see. She remained unaware that investigators were mapping her movements, analyzing patterns, and tracing money flows with a patience that rivaled her own. By the end of the third week, the illusion that Avelina had built with such care was beginning to fracture. The Sheikh's doubts, coupled with the combined skills of international fraud specialists and local detectives, created pressure she could not anticipate. The first cracks in her carefully constructed empire were forming, invisible to her but unmistakable to those pursuing the truth. The stage was set for confrontation, and while Avelina believed herself untouchable, the chase that would ultimately end her freedom had quietly begun. Detective Jordan Mace and Agent Omar Keane began tracing the smallest anomalies in Avelina Royce's network, and what seemed like insignificant details quickly became critical pieces of evidence. Every transfer, every temporary account, every minor inconsistency in documentation was examined with meticulous care. Avelina had designed her scheme to be invisible. But no deception is flawless when faced with investigators trained to see patterns others overlook. Mace reviewed timestamps and IP addresses while Keane analyzed cross-border transfers, piecing together a trail that connected offshore accounts to temporary wallets that Avelina believed were untraceable. Each discovery revealed the sophistication of her plan, but also highlighted its vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Mommy carried on under the illusion of normalcy. Sunlight reflected off the city's high-rises. Waves lapped against pristine beaches, and the streets buzzed with luxury cars and tourists. Avelina moved through this world as if she were untouchable, attending parties, shopping for designer clothes, and posting curated glimpses of her life on social media. She smiled at every camera and waved at acquaintances, unaware that every step was being monitored. Every detail of her life, no matter how mundane, became a clue, a digital breadcrumb that investigators could follow. A single metadata tag, overlooked by Nadia Serrano while updating one of the forged websites, became the thread that unraveled the carefully woven web she had built. The investigators began mapping her movements, overlaying digital trails with physical surveillance, and cross-referencing every transaction. They discovered patterns in her daily routines that allowed them to predict her next steps. Temporary accounts, once thought secure, were linked to shell companies that existed only briefly, but each left a trace. Emails, device signatures, and minor financial habits formed a mosaic that pointed directly to Avelina. What she had considered invisible had now come highly visible to those who knew what to look for. The pressure on the Sheikh intensified. He had begun receiving updates from both Agent Keane and Detective Mace, detailing the irregularities they had uncovered. Every layer of investigation exposed a new piece of deception: property documents that had no official record, dashboards that existed only in digital fabrication, and transfers that circled accounts designed to vanish. The realization that he had been manipulated was both infuriating and alarming. The $5 million were no longer just a lost investment. They were part of an elaborate trap, meticulously designed to exploit his trust. Avelina, however, remained blissfully unaware. She believed her preparation had removed all risk, that her network of accounts, identities, and digital camouflage rendered her untouchable. She had moved with confidence through Miami's social scene, enjoying the sense of power and control. But beneath the veneer of luxury, investigators were closing in. Every small mistake she had made, every digital signature Nadia had inadvertently left, became a link in the chain leading to her. Her freedom was shrinking with every analyzed transaction, every mapped movement, and every correlation the detectives drew. As the investigation intensified, Detective Mace realized that the case required precision rather than haste. Avelina had to be caught at the right moment before she detected that the net was tightening around her. Agent Keane coordinated with international authorities to freeze accounts and track assets. Offshore transfers, previously assumed lost, were now being traced back through multiple layers of deception. Each piece of evidence added to a larger picture, revealing not only the extent of Avelina's crime, but also the audacity and cunning that had allowed her to manipulate a billionaire. Even as Avelina continued her life of apparent freedom, the shadows of investigation loomed closer. Surveillance teams observed her movements at parties and in public spaces, while digital specialists analyzed her online activity. Every email, every transaction, every seemingly random action was now a potential thread that could unravel her entire operation. The illusion she had created, once flawless, was cracking, and the countdown to her inevitable exposure had begun. By the end of this phase, the investigators had a clear path forward. They could predict her movements, trace her financial trails, and connect every action to the stolen $5 million. The carefully crafted empire of deception, built on charm, greed, and false sophistication, was no longer invulnerable. Avelina's confidence had blinded her to the inevitability of discovery. What she had thought was untouchable was now fully exposed to the patient, methodical eyes of law enforcement. The stage was set for the dramatic confrontation that would bring her carefully orchestrated life crashing down, Avelina Royce believed, herself untouchable as she moved through Miami, with the same confidence that had carried her through every social event and investment meeting. Her life was a series of curated images, designer outfits, rooftop parties, and carefully staged snapshots that suggested effortless success. She smiled at every camera, laughed at every joke, and maintained the illusion of power and control. What she did not realize was that the investigators had closed in with precision, mapping every movement, tracing every digital footprint, and following every financial trail she thought was invisible. The net was tightening, and each step she took brought her closer to the moment she could no longer escape. Detective Jordan Mace and Agent Omar Keane had spent weeks constructing a full picture of Avelina's operation. Every account, every shell company, and every offshore transfer was traced back to her. They had pieced together her network of deception. From the forged investment documents to the temporary wallets designed to disappear, Nadia Serrano's small error, a single metadata tag, had become the critical link that tied Avelina directly to the crime. It was a reminder that even the most meticulous plan could be undone by the tiniest oversight, and investigators were prepared to exploit every one of them. The team coordinated a quiet operation, designed to ensure that Avelina would have no chance to flee or destroy evidence. Surveillance had shown patterns in her daily routine: the times she left her apartment, the routes she took to social events, and even the people she trusted most. When the moment arrived, it was calculated down to the minute. Avelina was attending an exclusive party in a Miami penthouse, unaware that the walls around her freedom were closing in. Every laugh, every toast, every movement was being watched, and every exit strategy she had imagined had already been neutralized. As she stepped outside, expecting to leave unnoticed, officers moved in swiftly and quietly. Avelina's calm facade faltered only for a moment before being replaced by instinctive composure. She was handcuffed and informed of the charges, the first time she truly grasped the gravity of the situation. Years of meticulous planning, months of execution, and $5 million in deception had culminated in this single, unavoidable moment. The reality of her actions, once abstract, now became starkly real as she was led away from the life she had created. The seizure of accounts and assets followed immediately. Investigators recovered significant portions of the $5 million, unraveling the complex web Avelina had woven. Each account frozen, each transfer traced, revealed not only the extent of her crime, but the ingenuity she had employed. Sheikh Rafiq Al-Zahir, relieved but still shaken, watched as the scheme that had threatened his trust and wealth was dismantled. The money, once thought lost, was now being returned through coordinated international efforts. And the illusion of control Avelina had so carefully maintained crumbled entirely. Even Nadia Serrano, who had been the quieter, technical partner in the operation, could not escape. She attempted to flee, hoping to outrun the investigators, but was captured 2 days later. Every layer of protection Avelina and her accomplice had built proved insufficient against the patient, methodical work of law enforcement. The sophistication of the crime, which had seemed untouchable, was revealed to be nothing more than a house of cards. Collapsing under scrutiny, the aftermath was a stark lesson in the limits of greed and cunning. Avelina's carefully constructed world of luxury and manipulation, the one she had believed could shield her from consequences, had failed. She had relied on charm, confidence, and meticulous planning. But the investigators' persistence, skill, and patience had been greater. Justice, patient and thorough, had unraveled the illusion and ensured accountability. Avelina Royce, once the golden socialite of Miami, became a cautionary tale. Her story was a reminder that even the most polished deception leaves traces, that trust can be manipulated but not indefinitely, and that every action carries consequences. The $5 million, the luxurious images, the curated life, all of it was swept away by the quiet, unstoppable force of truth. What remained was the lesson. No matter how invincible someone believes themselves to be, a single detail overlooked, a single misstep, can bring the entire empire of deception crashing down. And in the end, justice always finds its way.